friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Not that long ago I filmed a bookish Q&A, and something that came in after I had already filmed the video was a question from Lydia's Pages, which is best tips for getting through a giant TBR pile built up over years of impulse buying. Kind of works out well that this came in later because I feel like this is a topic in and of itself. So I am no stranger to the huge TBR pile built up over impulse buys. I am in the position of working through this TBR at the moment. So these are just some of the things that I have thought about and I have put into practice for myself in tackling this TBR. Obviously, there is no shame in having a huge TBR if you don't feel stressed out by it, if it brings you joy, if it's not something that you can't afford, then I don't really see a problem with having like a physical TBR to choose from. This is just if it's bothering you, here are some things that I have been thinking about that you might find helpful. So the first thing for me was reflecting on my spending habits. For 6 months, I started keeping track of all of my spending and where I did that spending. So like, was it online? Was it in person? Was it from the same company? Like, where was I spending the money? Something that I definitely noticed was I did the bulk of my impulse purchases online. When I went into a store, it was always with a clear purpose and like with a shopping list and for items that I needed. And the reason for this problem is, I guess, that I am an emotional shopper. So I also looked at what time of the day did I purchase these things. And for me, these impulse purchases were always early in the morning. So I get up like stupid early for my job. I get up, it used to be around 3:30 in the morning for a 5 a.m. start. When I was tired, when I was consuming bookish content, because while I'm eating my breakfast, while I'm getting ready in the morning, I'm listening to bookish podcasts, I'm watching the YouTube videos that I've put on my watch later playlist, the bookish videos there. I was much more likely to build a cart while I was tired and like unhappy early in the morning and then just go, fuck it, and impulse buy it. Identifying this about myself was part of the process of reflecting on my buying, and something that I would highly recommend doing if you are an online impulse shopper is to take your saved credit card information out of any site that you impulse buy from. Because something that I also noticed once I did that was I keep my wallet in the winter, it's in my coat that I wear every day. And in the summer, it's in whatever bag I'm using to go to work or to drive, right? And I don't keep that in my office. I don't keep that in my living room wherever I'm watching these videos. The effort of getting up, walking upstairs, digging out my wallet, pulling out the credit card, and like having to type in the numbers will often make me stop and think, wait, do I really need this? Do I really want this? Whereas if I just have information saved into a site or PayPal hooked up to things, I am much more likely to be like, boop, without even thinking about it. So I think that was like the number one thing with reducing the TBR, because I am much less likely to purchase 5 books in store than I am online, right? Like physically holding and seeing and walking up to the cash with 5 books is very different than like having these like flat digital objects in a cart. It doesn't feel like a big purchase online. Identifying my problem areas is a huge part of reducing my TBR. The other place that I really struggle with is used bookstores that do credit. This is the unfortunate part with a lot of these used bookstores in my area specifically. They do credit that expires. So you have 12 months from when they give you that credit to spend that credit. And so when I take books back to these used bookstores, it is very tempting to, while they are going through my stack of books and totaling up my credit, to be shopping the bookstore knowing that, well, I have to spend this credit Otherwise, I may as well have just done a big garage sale and like got 50 cents for each book, and that money actually being mine, rather than getting like $3 or $5 for each book and then never spending that credit, right? I think looking at how you are moving things out of your collection is also important. So something that I'm thinking about now is building up a large enough pile of books to do a garage sale, and then sure, maybe every book's $1, and I'm not making as much money as I would if I'd given them for credit at the used bookstore, but the dollars that I make from a yard sale are actually mine, opposed to a credit that I'm under pressure to spend, right? Like, if part of that process of reducing and cultivating a really curated personal library is unhauling things and like recouping some of the money with used bookstores, definitely look at where you are bringing these books. Like, if you can go to a bookstore, a used bookstore that gives you credit that doesn't expire, pick that one. The last like tip for just not bringing in new books all the time is to create wish lists or idea boards. I have both idea boards and wish lists on Amazon, and I've broken them down into very specific things, and like I make notes on them. I have an HKHS pod wish list. Any books that Joe and Brenna are reading that I think are really good, I will put on that wish list instead of in my cart. And it's a very specific wish list. It's not just a giant general wish list that feels like things can get lost in. There's the feature to put in notes, so I can put in notes for why I put this on my wish list at all, and oftentimes going back and reading those notes, like I was excited about it when they were excited about it, but going back, I'm not actually interested in this, right? My physical TBR is like things I can touch, things I can look at, things I can browse, things I can flip over. So I think the sort of aesthetics of the Amazon wish list or idea board works really well, because you can take it from the list format and put it into the like larger icon format, and it just makes me feel better about a wish list. I don't know. So I would definitely recommend keeping specific idea boards or wish lists. It's just a way to like visualize and like neatly keep track of things. And that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily purchasing those from Amazon. Finding a website that does that for you. If it's Goodreads and you want to create a bunch of different shelves of like idea lists, I would do that. Or maybe Pinterest. I'm not a big fan of Pinterest, but I feel like you could maybe create like a very aesthetic Pinterest board that's like your ideas. I think that's the idea that's really helped, is instead of impulse buying, is adding it to an idea board of some kind. So it doesn't feel like these things just get lost. So those are my tips for not increasing the TBR you already have, but what to do with the things that you currently own. So I am a big fan of separating them out. I know a lot of booktubers mix things that they have read and haven't read because they know what they have and haven't read. Could I do that? 100%. I know what I have read and haven't read. But I think for me, again, I'm a very visual person. If I were to mix them in, they would just become one thing. I probably wouldn't shop my shelves as much if I just sort of stored them with my read books. When I'm looking for something to read, these are the shelves that I come to. I shop these shelves the way I would shop a bookstore. And something that I do quite often here is rearrange the books on this shelf. Every once in a while, I will go through here and I will sort them differently. So right now, I have all of the men separated out from all of the women. One of my goals for 2020 was to focus more on diversifying the voices that I'm reading. And so I wanted to prioritize queer and women of color by separating out women. I hoped that that would be easier. And then you can see here, like with the Black Lives Matter movement, I want to also prioritize diverse voices. And so I went through again and I pulled out a stack of things being like, here are the things that you own by Black authors. You don't need to haul a bunch of books by Black authors. You have things to read here first. And then, of course, because we are all imperfect and we all fuck up, these are the books that I've actually purchased in 2020. And I have them separated because I really thought I was doing a good job of not hauling books, and I think I have done a good job compared to other years, but I think it's still good to see the things that I have sort of impulse purchased, like when I have given in, these are the things that I have given into. I want to prioritize these things. I know in the past a lot of people have done like the read 10 buy 1, the read 5 buy 1. I have tried that. It doesn't super work for me. There is just a book buying ban, and I feel like the book buying ban results in some like unhealthy attitudes towards shopping for a lot of people, or at least for myself. So if I say I can't buy books, then when I do buy a book that I'm really interested in, that I will read right away, there's a lot of guilt associated with that purchase, which is maybe not a good thing. Like, we don't need to feel guilty. So you bought something. You have money, if it's in your budget, if it's within your means, to buy this piece of entertainment. I don't think you should feel like feelings of guilt towards that item. I also think that the book buying bans often result in massive hauling. Like, when people do give in, it's never just one book. It's like 20 books. So I almost feel like, again, it goes back to your buying habits, purchasing with intention. If you really want a book and like you want to go home and read it like that afternoon, and you're actually going to read it, why the arbitrary ban, right? Like, why deny yourself something that you are interested in and want to learn about and want to read right away, simply because you have this ban, right? I think, again, a lot of this comes down to changing your shopping habits. So I'm not sure that I would recommend banning the books, because I don't think that solves the problem. At least for me, it wouldn't solve the problem, because my issue is emotional impulse buying. And so it's about changing my habits opposed to denying that I enjoy books and want to own books. So something that has helped me out in reducing the TBR pile is challenges. Look at the holidays in each month. Look at the readathons that are happening and participate in community reading. Set yourself challenges that force you to engage with your TBR. Definitely reshuffle, look through things, and I would say don't feel guilty about unhauling something. Like, there are definitely books that I put on a TBR list again and again and again. If my intention is to read this book, and after like months and months of putting it on a TBR and picking it up and never feeling like it, and picking it up and never feeling like it, maybe that's a time to send that book off into the world for somebody else to love and read, and like borrow it from the library if it becomes something that you still want to have read. Because of my own like anxiety issues around germs, I will probably never borrow physical books from the library personally, but there are advantages to signing up for your library and getting access to their audiobooks. I find myself borrowing a lot of nonfiction from the library in audio, borrowing old favorites from the library in audio, and also, because there is so much on this TBR at this point, borrowing books that are on the TBR on audio just to try and get through them faster, because I feel like there's a lot of empty space in my day where I'm doing things like driving, or I'm at work shelving a book cart, or I'm exercising, or I'm waiting to pick someone up, or I'm doing chores. There are like spaces where I can multitask, where it wouldn't be appropriate to sit and read a book. And like the audiobooks do that. And I'm also finding that I will borrow a bunch of things on audio, or I'll put something on a hold list that I'm really interested in, and then by the time it comes around to me, I am actually not interested in it anymore. That's a thing that I probably in the past would have impulse purchased, and like by the time it arrived in the mail, I wasn't interested in it. Why can't I say that word? Nope, we're just gonna leave it anymore. I think taking advantage of places where you can borrow with like no penalty is good. You could start a book club and like very selfishly ask your friends to read things that you already own. I've definitely done this with my in real life book club. If it's like, hey, who wants to pick a book? I'm like, well, let me look at my shelves. Does anyone else want to read any of the things that I already own? Cool. Buddy reads. If you are going through your TBR, if you have it like, and I mean, Lydia does have a social media account, but maybe a way to tackle this would be to post a couple of books on your social media and be like, I'm looking for a buddy read. Does anyone want a buddy read with me? So that you are pulling from your TBR with another human and have that accountability. Because I feel like a lot of the times the books that sit on my TBR the longest are difficult reads that I know I want to read, but I don't want to read it alone. And having a second person gets me to actually read that thing, right? I guess the last thing would be how to tackle a TBR that you've impulse purchased is to Marie Kondo style go through and like really look at every object. Is this something that you still want in your life? And I do this quite frequently. Like, I just have to admit that this is a thing that I purchased as a completely different human, in a completely different mindset. I have no interest in it now. It's okay to let it go. It's okay to give it to somebody else, to donate it to a charity shop, or to take it to a used bookstore for credit. Like, just because you own it now doesn't mean you have to hold on to it forever. And I feel like I have gotten better about unhauling. Like, my partner and I are actively trying to find a house. I look at the size of a lot of the houses in our price range, and it's going to be tough to get 6 Billy bookcases into this house. I am probably never going to have a space where all 6 bookcases are in one room ever again. Because I mean, these are houses of a certain time period, rooms are smaller. Whenever I look at these shelves, whenever I'm looking at what I want to do, what I want to read, I'm also thinking very carefully about what I want to bring forward in my life. If you are gifted something, because this is even harder, if somebody knows that you are a bookish human and they gift you things, just because it's been gifted doesn't mean you have to read it. I'm definitely guilty of this. I gift books that I love to people. I mean, I hope that they read them because I'm passing on something that like I really loved to a human that I really love, and I think that they will really like it. But I mean, if they don't, like, you're not obligated to keep gifts. The action has already been done. Like, the person gifted you the gift to make you feel loved. You experienced that love. You got the thing out of the gift. If you're not actually going to read it, you don't need to hold on to it. So I think that's it. That's really where I'm at. That's how I'm tackling the TBR. It's mostly from the purchasing side of things. Like, I am physically capable of reading the number of books that I currently own in 2 years. I know that it's not an overwhelming number if I actually don't buy books. Now, is that realistic? I am probably going to buy books. If I'm buying them mindfully and in smaller quantities, I think it's still doable to read what I own, and like in the long run will make me a conscious consumer, will make me more careful with what I choose to bring into my life. So thank you, Lydia, for your question. I feel like it's always important to reflect on how we're consuming, what we're doing. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk about this TBR because it's definitely something that I think a lot about, and like I have definitely been in the past 6 months with the budget tracker, with reflecting on my spending habits, really looking at where my money goes. Just having the opportunity to talk and think about this has been good for me, at least. And if, I mean, you get something out of it, that's awesome too. Let me know your thoughts on unread book piles, physical TBRs in the comments down below. How do you deal with your physical TBR? Are you one of those people that doesn't own books? You're a borrower. You're a digital reader, so you never have the issue of space. You're an audiobook listener, so you also never have the issue of space, because I feel like that's really where it comes down to, is like I could own 200 books on my Kindle and it wouldn't feel as bad because it's not as like weighty a presence in any room, right? So I would love to know how folks who read in different formats feel about their collections. Before we go, we have to thank my patrons. Thank you, patrons, for making videos like this possible. I really appreciate the work that you enable me to do. If you are interested in becoming a patron, links to the Patreon page are in the description box down below. Until next time, I hope you are staying safe. I hope you are keeping informed on the situations around the globe, that you are educating yourself. I will leave some resources in the description box down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!